Welcome to the Advancing Alternatives podcast, where we discuss anything from growing flowers to the microbiology involved in plant life. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Trevor Charles, who is a professor and microbiologist. Dr. Charles, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Dr. Charles, can you just briefly introduce yourself, where you live, what sort of work you do?
Sure. I'm a professor of microbiology in the biology department at University of Waterloo. That's Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. Sort of between Toronto and Detroit, just so you can pinpoint it geographically there. At the university, what I teach is not really that related to indoor agriculture or CEA. I teach a course in bacterial genetics. I teach a course in synthetic biology and also a course in scientific communication. We do have a research lab at the university that really has three different areas of focus. One is pathogen surveillance, mostly in municipal wastewater. So this was an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic. And so a lot of the methods that we have developed and that we use in that project, we can bring into the surveillance of the hydroponic systems. We also have projects that might be of interest, but not really that related to what we're talking about, conversion of food waste to bioplastics using genome engineered bacteria. There's really an opportunity to use some of the waste from greenhouses as a feedstock to produce bioplastics. And wouldn't it be amazing if some of that plastic could be used then for packaging for the product that comes out of the greenhouse? Another area that we do extensive research in is general plant microbiome. So that's directly related to our healthy hydroponics work. But here we're looking to really study in depth the mechanisms that bacteria use when they interact with plants. And these are mostly beneficial bacteria. So these are bacteria that can fix nitrogen so that you don't have to provide nitrogen fertilizer. They are bacteria that are able to reduce the stress response in plants through disrupting the stress ethylene pathway. So there's a lot of interesting work there that eventually will find its way into products and services that are available for the growers. We also have some companies called Metagenome BioLife Science, and this is in the genomic space, specifically for microbiome. So basically, we use DNA sequencing tools to analyze the microbiome. Because we've come through a pandemic, the COVID pandemic, I like to relate it to that. You all know about qPCR testing to identify the SARS-CoV-2 virus. We use a very, very similar method. And we also use sequencing, which allows you to identify all of the organisms in your system, all of the microorganisms in your system, including pathogens. We actually have an online portal that is used to present to the grower the results in an easily digestible fashion. So an example could be Fusarium root rot or Pythium, or there's a lot of viruses like tomato brown rugose fruit virus that was a large concern and still is. There's always emerging pathogens. In hydroponic systems, typically they can be distributed through the system quite rapidly with the water that's circulating. So it's important to get a handle on it and figure out, when it does enter your system, how do you then keep on top of it? Basically, our approach is that the more you know about risk within your system, the better off you're going to be at being able to keep on top of it.
How are they detecting that? I mean, does this provide them early detection? If they don't have this,
Yes.
how would they know that this is a problem in their greenhouse?
So if there's no early detection, you would have to rely on symptoms that your crop would exhibit. And so this would be pre-symptom that the early detection would be useful. Sometimes it's also really useful to know what your infecting organism is. So the treatment for fusarium might be different than a treatment for a pythium, but the symptoms might be similar. One of the things that we're trying to develop is developing the concept of a healthy microbiome. So just like you would have a healthy microbiome for your gut, if you can cultivate a dynamic and diverse microbiome within the hydroponic system, then there's potential to reduce the incidence of disease within that system because it provides a buffer. You can imagine if a pathogen comes in and there's no other microbes or very few microbes in the system to displace it, then it's just going to come in and attack your plant right away. But if it has to compete with a diverse and healthy microbiome, then the hope is that the overall plant health would be improved. I think one way to do it would be to relate it to soil, right? Because there's a lot of knowledge about how a healthy soil is important for growing a healthy crop. And the reason why the healthy soil is important, and what contributes to that soil health, is the diversity of microbes that are present within the soil. So soils are, some of the most diverse microbial habitats on Earth, and that contributes to crop production, crop health. There are bacteria in there that do things like solubilize phosphate or fix nitrogen, produce phytohormones that can signal to the plant. All of these interesting things that those microbes do in the soil. If you move to a hydroponic system, you don't have that microbiome in the soil. You don't have all of those good microbes. So typically what happens in the hydroponic system is that a microbiome will exist, but it will form in sort of a haphazard fashion. So you don't really have any control over it. So in some cases, it might end up being a very positive microbiome, but oftentimes it won't be. And so can we get to a situation where we can design that microbiome so that it is optimal for the plant? And I think that we could reliably reduce disease incidence and even increase yield by substantial amounts. Currently, we have about 30 or 40 growers who are sending in samples routinely. We also have a company called Earth Microbial that is developing and marketing inoculants that are essentially beneficial microbes for these systems so that you can build a very healthy microbiome in these systems. There's nothing automated at this time. So essentially, water samples would be sent in directly. We also have a water sampling kit so that all of the microbes can be captured on a filter, which is then sent to us so that you don't need to actually send the water. So that's just done on site. But all of the lab analysis is done at our lab in Waterloo.
With those 30 or so growers, is there a specific type of crop that growers are turning to this technology for?
It's really varied. A lot of lettuce and leafy greens, indoor farms and greenhouses. But also we've got tomato growers, pepper growers. It's a good mix. I was just at the Indoor AgCon East meeting in Danville, Virginia. And there are a lot of stories there about how climate change and adverse weather are having a huge impact on field crop production. And there's many examples where there have been problems in the marketplace where there's not enough produce to serve. And this has really been an impetus, I think, for the development of the controlled environment agriculture as people are seeing that you can really increase your yield tremendously and really without regard to challenges like the weather.
Now we have a lot of tomato growers who use our equipment. Just briefly share a little about tomato root virus if you can and how that really is a danger to the tomato plant.
Yeah, so tomato ground rugose fruit virus is one of the Obama viruses. There's a number of them. Why it really has an impact is because it's been able to evade the resistance genes that are bred into commercial tomato lines. And So the existing varieties they basically have no resistance against that particular virus. It can spread extremely rapidly, and it's spread just from tools that are used in managing the crop through workers who happen to touch the crop. It's a really big challenge. It is also very hardy, so it's really difficult to inactivate it. It's an RNA virus that can last a long time. Interestingly, something that we found is that it's the most abundant virus in municipal wastewater systems. And so what it can do is it can survive through the dietary tract. So if somebody eats a product that was made with an infected tomato, then it's going to come out the other end into the toilet and into the municipal wastewater. So we know that there's a lot of product that was produced using infected tomato. And also, a lot of the workers that are going into the greenhouse probably have a lot of that virus inside them. So you really have to be very careful about different ways that this infection could be introduced into the greenhouse.
Hydroponics versus growing in the soil. Is one more susceptible to bad bacteria? Is one more prone to have a good microbiome? Is it a toss-up? What would you say on that question?
Soil can harbor pathogens, but it can also be a good source of beneficial microbes, right? Hydroponic systems, you have the opportunity to treat the circulating water so that you really reduce the microbial load. And that would include pathogens as well as the good bacteria and the good fungi. But, the danger is then, as we've talked about before, that if a pathogen does come into that system that does not already have microbes in it, it'll just take over and could cause a catastrophe. It is easier to monitor the hydroponics because the overall number of microbes that's present is so much less than in soil.
You know how long there's been research on microbiomes and hydroponic systems?
It's really just an emerging area. So surprisingly, there hasn't been that much work done. There's not that many publications. So I would say probably just in the last 4 or 5 years. So we have our first publication in the area that should be coming out in the next couple of months. We don't know yet where it's going to be published, so I can't tell you exactly where to go, but we will post it on our website. So website for Healthy Hydroponics Services, healthyhydroponics.ca.
Thank you for listening to the Advancing Alternatives podcast. For more information, visit advancingalternatives.com, where you can learn about how we are helping growers by providing technology for controlled environment agriculture.